You're listening to Radio Cosmos.
All night long.
Bravo! My compliments, little lady.
Commercial!
Break for 30 seconds.
You are now listening to Bad Radio.
Hello and welcome to Bad Radio. BAD stands for Business at a Distance. This is a show about local businesses and business networking. We are here in the News Radio WFLA Orlando studios from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. every Sunday. And I am your host, Angela Smerito, and I want to give a huge shout out to Anna Smerito with Bad Marketing for the fantastic job she does on the Bad Radio YouTube videos. Converting these shows into short-form content reels has been a huge place for growth with the Bad brand, so we thank her very much for that. Okay, so today we are going to dive deep into the world of business networking with the largest business networking organization in the world, Business Network International, or most of us call it the BNI. I don't know how many people say BMI. I'm like, no, BNI. So we have two key members of the Central Florida team here, and that is Michelle Rhea and Heidi Vold. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Mm-hmm. So, do you guys get that a lot? They're like, BMI? I'm like, no, it's not like your body, whatever max index.
Yeah.
Be like, we're all going to work out.
Right. So let's just, like I said, let's start with introducing the both of you and your role within the Central Florida region. So, Michelle, you go first. I know we can't really see each other.
That's okay.
But I know you're there.
I'm peeking through that.
Okay.
All right, so my name is Michelle Rhea. I'm the Managing Director for Central Florida BNI, and my role and job with the regional team is to support all of our chapters in Central Florida. We have 40 active chapters right now.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's amazing.
We've had a lot of growth, and it's been amazing. So my job is to support all those chapters. I'm in a chapter meeting anywhere from 3 to 5 times a week, traveling all over the 6 counties that we cover, supporting all of our members, answering emails, phone calls, text messages, supporting the leadership, pretty much anything our chapters need. I'm their first point of contact in
Very
Central Florida.
nice. And as we go farther in the show, I want to talk about the structure of each chapter and how it's just like a very, very well-oiled machine. When everybody's like doing the things they need to do.
Right.
But that being said, so, all right. So what I know what your role is, but you tell everybody.
So I'm Heidi Vold, and I'm actually the managing launch director for the chapters, but also I'm the market development manager over Central Florida. So what that means is everything that I do is I'm building all the chapters that are coming into the region. Mm-hmm. So I kind of always joke around saying I'm like Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come.
Right.
So on that, I get to work with businesses that maybe haven't been connected to BNI or have been connected to BNI, and it really is a huge growth opportunity. But it's like I'm starting from one person and building it to, your 20 plus members to hand them off to Michelle. And I always joke around with her. I was like, I built it. She doesn't break it.
Right.
And so it's like we work really well together on there. And like one of the things that's been really, I guess, dynamic about Michelle and I is having it where we both, she's been with this process of launch by doing that with me. And again, the launch side is so important because that also really helps give the additional opportunities within our region and all the businesses that we have coming up.
Right. I can only imagine what the challenge is with launch because of setting the structure and making sure you have the right people to do the launch, because I think that really is going to make or break whether or not that chapter is going to make it to the launch phase because of, like I said, it takes a lot to put all that stuff together.
Well, you have to find the right pieces, especially on the launch side, because, when there's an established chapter, it's already built. So it's kind of like you're coming into it. And I always kind of joke almost like you're coming into school in the middle of the school year. So it's like, okay, you aren't necessarily sure who's been there before. If you're the first person in that seat, it just depends on the group. And then there's like launch side of it. You're starting school at the beginning of the year together.
Right.
And so it's like you have to find the right people, make sure that you have the right driving forces. And of course, the biggest thing is we don't want to just put people in a seat.
Right.
And then have it where, and I always joke, is like we don't want to be in a boat and then have it where like 3 in the back are sitting there telling you, row. And then the rest of them are like sweating away and working, trying to build the group. And then, you don't want to have resentment towards the people that you're trying to grow your businesses around.
Well, like I said, it's a whole system. So a little background, so my background is in radio, and I worked actually at the iHeart for a long time, and that was a lot of like agency type work. I still worked, I still was like boots on the ground, like talking to local businesses and stuff, but it wasn't until I went to a smaller radio group that I understood, I was introduced to the power of networking. Now, it was with a BNI member. He's been a while. It's Brian Hastings with Four Seasons AC. So, I called on him religiously. I was like, come buy radio from me, buy radio. And one day I got past his bookkeeper or his gatekeeper, and I was able to get a face-to-face appointment with him. And he gave me a small budget, and I was thrilled. I was like, woo, I made it. And he got some results from that. And so he and I became friends. Like, I was his radio rep, and he was buying commercials from me. And he invited me to a different networking group, and he introduced me to how it works. And I was floored. I had no idea that there was groups out there that you could meet with that wanted to help you grow, that was going to help you get meetings with people. And then I was like, this is the only way, and at that time I heard people talking about BNI, and again, this was pre-COVID, so I always judge things on pre-COVID, post-COVID. Yep. So but what I had heard is, they're so structured. It's really hard. They have all these guidelines. And so, from like the word of mouth, I was like, oh, that's scary. People say it's scary. So I'm going to stay clear of BNI. Post-COVID, I was like, I'm going to probably give this an opportunity because I saw some boss babes starting a chapter. And it was Power Moves, and it was Lizzie Barassa, Rachel Roach, and Paula was like the lead person, and Jenny Andrews. I had one-to-ones with all of these, and I'm like, they're all doing this, so it has to be the right thing to do. How did you two end up finding your way to BNI? Oh, Michelle first. Okay.
Who do you want to go first?
So I had my first experience in BNI about 20 years ago.
20?
Yeah,
oh,
where I was.
Were you like, what, 6?
Thank you, yeah.
12?
No. In my mid-20s, I would sub for my husband at the time, who was in a BNI group with a painting company.
So a family thing.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, so I would occasionally go in and sit in. So that was my first experience, and I always thought, well, that's pretty cool. If I'm ever in a business where I can do this, I'd probably get back into it. Fast forward, that 20 years, 2019, I left the healthcare field. I just was tired of dealing with all the bureaucracy of that. And I got into real estate. And, when you get into real estate, you very typically in your goal setting will come up with different avenues that you want to focus on for your lead generation, which is now, we don't use the word lead in BNI, but
referral babies. Referral.
Right.
Exactly.
But one of my lead generation sources was BNI.
Right.
I did open houses, sphere of influence, and BNI.
Right.
And I really made that a focus of my business at that time. And it was instrumental in, we did a launch. I'm sure Heidi will tell you about that. Like, I started in a launching group in Oviedo.
Yeah,
so
that's the one that business launchers. That's
business
the group I'm in now.
Yes.
We all have been in that one.
Oh, that's right.
And when I moved actually across town,
too.
I came back. I was like, this is nearby, and this is my family too.
Yeah. So I started in business launchers. I was a founding member there, and I was there for 4 years. And then this opportunity opened up. And, when Tim's our executive director, when he started mentioning that this position was going to open up, and I was reading through and thinking of, like, what it entailed, I was like, oh, like, that's right.
It sounds like
alley.
he was eyeballing you anyway.
Yeah.
I think he probably already had. Maybe
I think I told him I wanted the job before it was even
a job,
out there completely yet. And I still had to work for it. Like, it was a couple interviews, and it was several months hire process. So I was just really fortunate to be selected, because it really has been truly one of. I've done a lot of jobs and careers in my life, and this has by far been one of the most rewarding things that I've done.
It's got to be rewarding.
Yeah,
especially
I love
when
it.
I love hearing success stories, and that's something that I get to see a lot on a weekly basis with BNI, is people coming in and just starting off and being scared and not knowing what to do, and all of a sudden they have like this whole support system. And it's not just sending referrals, it's a support system of people that are encouraging you. And that's the part that I was not accustomed to, because like when you're in radio sales, it's like, it's a
little cutthroat.
It's very cutthroat. Yeah, you don't, like I said, it's like first come, you're all trying to get that same piece of business. And so I was like, what? These people want to help me? They're going to give me referrals? Oh, all right. You know what that means? That means we're going to break. So when we get back, we're going to pick back up with you, Heidi. So everybody stay tuned for more Bad Radio. Welcome back. And this portion of the show is brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore. Well, September is here, but it certainly hasn't cooled off yet. So head on over to Premier Couple Superstore, because they have got a huge selection of lingerie, shoes, toys, games, love oils, and a ton of great gifts. Premier Couples Superstore, you don't pay those high prices because you go directly to the source. 5009 South OBT, or shop online at premiercouples.net, because a couple that plays together stays together.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't invited Premier Couples Superstore to my BNI chapter yet. I should, though, huh?
Invite me that day. I want to watch.
I'll try to get somebody to sub one of my launching groups.
All right. Well, we're here with Michelle Ray and Heidi Vold. They are with the regional. I always want to I have to make sure it's Central Florida.
Right.
Regional
we're
team.
We're the regional team
Right.
for Central Florida.
And so we got to hear a little bit about Michelle's background. So Heidi, when did you get started in BNI?
So BNI started in another state for me. So
Okay.
it will be 13 years in March.
Wow.
So I started back in actually Arizona.
Okay.
And so I was originally in the PNC insurance seat for home and auto. And I always laugh because the only way you can usually get into a chapter is if somebody either dies, moves, or retires.
Oh, I know. They hand them down to their children.
And at the time I was working for State Farm, so it's like we had a lot of different lines, from obviously life insurance,
Right.
we had banking products, we had mortgages, we had the financial planning, and then PNC. And I always laugh because I kept on being invited for a totally different seat. And I was like, everybody has to network anyway. And I was like, I don't want to go, because networking, in my opinion, a lot of the groups were not great. So that's why I always tell people on the launching side, invite until they show up to shut you up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was probably invited like 13 times for a different seat. And I finally went to shut somebody up because I was like, I'm so busy. I don't have time for this. This is very early in the morning. Why am I going to be up at 7:38? What? And so, of course, I'm like, I finally went to go and, shut someone up. And it's funny because back then I was much quieter than I am now. And so it was like, I didn't like public speaking. The concept of having to do like ask in front of like a bunch of people and you tell me I have to stand up. It's like, I remember that first time I ever did that. I had a Post-it note. I was shaking like I was,
Right?
in like middle school. And you got that shake. My knees were locking up. I think I started to black out a little bit too.
Oh, my goodness.
Because which now it's like throw me in front of people. And I was like, I don't know a stranger. So I'm like anybody who knows me. But when I first started there, I remember going to the group and I was like, oh my gosh, these people are really great.
I know, right?
And I always sit there and say, it's not about what we say, it's about how we make people feel. And then I was like, why didn't I come here earlier? Why did I give so many excuses as to why I shouldn't be, in a group, or why I shouldn't visit?
Right.
And then it was funny after that, I was like, I'm totally going to be in BNI. And I started out initially in a different seat than what
Right.
I moved to. And then actually somebody retired and I ran for the PNC seat, and then I got that. Then, of course, it moved me, fast forward some years, then I moved to Florida. I opened up my own insurance brokerage as well, and I was like, yep, nope, we got to do BNI.
Mm-hmm.
That was like non-optional. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to do my first ever launch, and I actually was the the founder of County Line Connections, and I helped actually launch that chapter. So that was my first launch as well. And we actually had our full kickoff and launch back in 2018.
Is that when that
That's when County Line Connections. Right. So that was where that all started, and that was my also beginning side of being on the launch side of Central Florida.
Right. And so I want to talk about the launches. I want to talk about the seats. I want to explain to the audience a lot of the things that we're talking about. Before we do that, though, I want to talk about BNI as an organization, a little bit of history about it, and kind of how it's formed to be like the international powerhouse that it is today. I looked it up and I saw how much the net worth of BNI like as a global brand, and I was like, whoa, all right. We're talking about a very successful business. So like I said, I'm open to let's talk a little bit about the history of BNI, the
you
starting.
Want to do it or me?
Huh?
I'll say something, then you can go to the numbers.
That sounds
Okay.
good.
Okay.
I like numbers too.
Yeah.
I do too.
So Ivan Meisner is the founder of BNI. He just kind of started and developed.
And what year? I mean, you don't have to give me exact, but how long ago was that?
40 years ago
40.
in May.
40 years. Okay. All right.
Heidi
Love
knows
it.
all the things. So Ivan Meisner developed it, and over time, it's just kind of morphed and become more and more
Do you
fine-tuned.
happen to know where it was started? In the United States, or was it overseas? It's okay.
Oh, it was
if you
in the
don't.
U.S.
It was in the US.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Yeah,
I do not remember. Was he in Texas? I don't
It
know.
might have been
I think it was Texas.
I was more concerned if it was started because it's international. You
No,
know
it
what I
start-
mean?
It is
started here.
international, but it started here.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's something that started here in the United States that is now in almost every country.
It's as of a
70
month ago, it now became 78 countries.
78
That's
countries.
We were in
beyond
77 before, and that actually, on the number side of that, we have over 324,000 plus members in over 11,133 plus chapters.
That is
globally.
Powerhouse.
Yeah,
So.
it's huge.
That's a momentary number. Take it away again.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, so Ivan started it, and it just, kind of started getting traction and became this global organization. Fun fact, our executive director, who owns 3 different regions, which is the largest franchise ownership in the country, New Hampshire, Northeast Florida, and Central Florida, Tim Roberts, he actually has been heavily involved in that whole process of how things have grown over at least the last 20 years of that. He was national director for several years, really involved in developing one of our biggest data point trackers, which is the Power of One report. So it's just our region in particular has a lot of depth into the history of BNI and how things have been developed and the influence within the organization as a whole. So it's just something we're pretty proud of.
He also was an intricate part of it when COVID happened 2020. He was a huge part of what was really helping form BNI to keep it moving forward in a really positive way as well.
Tim was our national director for BNI when COVID hit, and in 1 week he got every chapter in the U.S. onto Zoom.
That's beyond amazing. And now that I think about some of the good things that have come out of COVID, and the ability to do virtual meetings, in my opinion, is one of them.
Yeah.
Because in the field that I'm in, being able to have conversations and being able to see people's, their face, it's a very big part of my business for what I do, is being able to read the person I'm talking to. It also allows me to meet with a lot of people that wouldn't normally be able to meet with me because they're out in the field. Like if I want to talk to an electrician, or I want to talk to somebody like that about marketing, advertising, they're a business owner, but they're out in the field.
Right.
They're not going to come meet me in an office or a coffee shop or whatever. That's just not going to happen. So I've been able, through that Zoom, through that sort of thing, I've been able to have meetings with business owners while they're sitting in their truck on a site, a work site. So within 1 week,
I think it just opened up a lot of Zoom was always there, but I think it just, us using it as such a vital part of getting through COVID and actually growing and being successful through COVID, just allowed people to realize that there's all these different technologies and innovations, which is one of our core values, that you can use, not just in your BNI group, but in your business. Like in general, it really opened the door to see opportunities for people.
And when we first had the Zoom platform come together, and I was on the launch team in a lower role, it was funny because the launch side was the first ones to try out Zoom before they went out to the charter chapters.
right?
So that was something that I remember, if I recall correctly, I think I was the first one to do Zoom, and I remember doing like practice things of how in the world these breakout rooms were. I was like,
Nobody can figure out the
because
breakout
it was
rooms.
like trying to have that, and it was like, okay, Heidi, you're going to be like the first one, or one of the very first ones
Right.
to ever try
You're the
this for the
beta.
region. And I was like,
Yeah.
I was like, please don't screw it up. They didn't, so we're good.
Right. No, the going into breakout rooms was a little fun at first because they're just like, okay, you guys are going to see a link, hit accept, or hit, you know what I mean? I'm going to put you in a room and you're going to go, and then I'm going to pull you back. So you're going to have to wrap it up in that time frame that's on there.
Well, and actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm pretty sure it was business launchers because you were on a
It
Tuesday
was.
group. So the very first
It
ones
was
that
me.
ever tested, it was
I
me
was the
with her.
problem.
You guys were the ones that I was testing it out on. See, look at it. We're going
Yeah.
back farther.
Well, like I said, I think that's phenomenal because it allowed, like you said, BNI not just to continue to exist, but to actually grow.
Yeah,
One of
we
the
did.
networking groups that I was a part of, COVID annihilated it. So,
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go to break. When we get back, we're going to continue this conversation. So everybody stay tuned. Welcome back, and this portion of the show is brought to you by Body Street of Winter Park. Experience the future of fitness at Body Street in Winter Park. Lose weight, build muscle, tone your body in only 20 minutes a week. Visit bodystreet.us, where fitness meets efficiency. What I was saying is, like, when we're on break, the live stream can see us like cracking up and having a good time, and they're all like, "Wonder what they're talking about." Wonder what they're
Much better
saying over
stuff than
there.
the stuff on air.
So we're here with Michelle Ray and Heidi Vold, and they are part of the regional team with BNI. And so we talked about BNI a little bit, and then we talked about their background a little bit. And during this time, we've said certain things that people that aren't really sure how the structure of BNI works are going to be like, I don't know what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. So like I said this before the show started, my goal today is to help people that are listening to the show who have no idea what BNI is, understand what it is and how it works. And the people that know about BNI that have like those little scared moments, like I said I had because I had heard some things, understand that we're not like some crazy cult, that the overall goal here is not to take your money. The goal is to help you make your money. Very important thing to know too is that it is not a card passing situation, because as I grow my business, like I said, when you're a radio salesperson, you're kind of your own business. You work for an entity, but you have to go out and you have to negotiate your time. You have to set your meetings. You have to do all the things. And so I went to chambers. I went to a lot of different things, and I never left with anything but a handful of business cards. And I don't know, like I said, I was not very good at the whole networking thing anyway. I didn't really know what to do. So that's something that the BNI is not. And if that's what something's looking for, then you know what I mean? It might not be right for them. So we talked about the history a little bit, but let's just talk about the structure. So we'll start, let's just focus on our team here in Central Florida.
Okay.
So we talked about chapters, right? So let's just talk about what's the definition of a chapter.
Chapter is, once it is launched, what I'll let her speak to, a chapter is a group of individuals that are a named active chapter within the BNI Connect system. Mm-hmm. They've been identified as a group of people that have all signed on to work together as a group. And Heidi, you can say how they start.
Well, let's talk a little bit. What are the qualifications that somebody has to have in order to apply to be in a chapter?
So the seat has to be open for that individual. So one thing that makes BNI so incredibly different, and I want to just preface this with, we love other networking groups. We actually encourage our members, like, be involved in chamber, be involved in, other networking groups where you can meet people and grow your relationships. But BNI is different in that it is a one person per profession per seat.
Okay, so that would be like, when you say seat, you're talking about a profession.
Yeah,
a classification.
In a group of people, if I'm the residential real estate agent, there won't be another residential real estate agent that is a member of that chapter. So there's no inherent competition for me and the profession that I have as a member of that chapter. So there may be a commercial agent,
right?
But that commercial agent is going to focus in that chapter on commercial real estate,
right.
And I'm going to focus on residential real estate, and the insurance person for PNC is going to focus on that. There's no inherent competition amongst the members
within a chapter. But if you were to go to a chamber, there is no exclusivity.
Exactly.
No, there can be 100 of the exact same
and there
thing.
will be.
One of the things that I think is really important also to also preface is that, when they are applying, we're not looking for members that this is your hobby.
Yeah.
Okay.
We want this to be your primary job that you're looking, or what your career is, that is your primary focus.
And why is that? Is that because you just want 100% of them to be devoted? When I say devoted, you want them all in.
Yeah,
right?
You want to have them all in. You want to have the commitment that's on there. It's different when, I always sit there and say people have, you can have the job, which is just over broke, and then you can have the career. And, there's people, I'll say, like, on the PNC side, like, when I first came into insurance, I went into that knowing that the reason I was becoming an insurance agent back in the day was because of something that had happened with my grandmother's insurance. That was something that was a focal point, and I was like, I'm going to protect everybody so that they don't go through something that my grandmother had gone through. And it's funny because then the first person I actually worked for, she inherited her agency from her family.
Okay.
So she was looking at it as residual income. Everybody was just a number. There wasn't the care. There was a difference in how she kind of cared about it. So when I look at like BNI chapters, and when you have it where you have, I always say it's so important for us to understand each other's why, of why we went into the profession of what we did. Like when we're doing interviews, I always ask people, why is it that you got into this?
Right.
Because that also starts showing what their heart is. you find out what their drive is, and you also kind of remove the fluff of sorts, because the reality, when I'm working with launching groups, I'm always saying it's so important to find out, like, I want to know the authentic person, because at the end of the day, it's so easy for us all to go out there and say whatever we want, thinking that's what we want people to hear. I want to be surrounded with the people that are genuine, authentic, and they're wanting to make a difference, and they really want to help each other grow. And there's the saying that I literally tell every single launching group, and this is something that I look at, especially when you do have these chapters that are forming or even established. And Michelle's heard this from me multiple times in my launching chapters here, this literally every week, is there's a saying, surround yourself with people who fight for you in rooms that you aren't in. That's so important when you're having it with a person that is fully committed to what they are doing and their seat, because again, when they're taking the time to get to know one another and it has that mutual respect of going back and forth, they are, when you go into other rooms, other situations, they're way more aware of it, and they want to really help support one another, so they are fighting for one another's business.
Absolutely. And I love I love the passion of the business owners that I've met in BNI, and it's not all business owners. Like they can be associates or
salesmen
and things like that. So that's one thing I was trying to establish earlier, is that it's categorized by a profession. Not, you don't necessarily have to be a business owner to be in
100%.
BNI. But yes, like when I talk to people about being a guest on the show, I will always levitate towards the people that have a lot of passion for what they're doing, and they have like a fun story, and they could be talking. I had somebody on the show that was talking about cement slabs. But he was so passionate about his cement slabs that I was like, okay, I'll have you on.
And I think
it was called precast pads, and he was so happy. I was like, okay, we're going to talk about cement here. Let's do it.
And I think that's, kind of the point Heidi was making, was that when we're looking at members to join chapters, we want to make sure that the profession that they're applying for that seat is what their main business focus
primary,
is.
yeah.
Because I like to explain to members that your seat isn't just important to you. Giver's gain is our mantra. Like it's what we live by in BNI. So that seat is really important, not just to you and the referrals you're going to get, but to everybody else. So if I'm, and it's easy for me to use real estate examples, but there's so many. But if I'm a real estate agent and I'm only closing, 2 houses a year, that's not a great referral source for the mortgage person in that group. But that mortgage person is really depending on that real estate seat to help build his business and that title company.
So how invested that real estate agent is so very important to other people in the
which
group.
Is why when we invite everyone to come to see a BNI, check it out, see if it's going to be a good fit on your end. But there's also a process, which I know we're talking about systems. There's also a process and a membership committee team that's in every single chapter that does an interview process where you talk to the membership team and you make sure it's a great fit for that business owner and it's a great fit for the group as a whole, to make sure that not only is that member that's applying or that individual that's applying going to get what we can anticipate would be a great return on their time and investment in the chapter, but also that the chapter is going to grow their businesses from that seat as well. So it's very strategic process. That's why we have all the systems in place and everything like that, and why, people talk about there's all these rules and there's all these this. Well, it's in place to make sure that when you go into a BNI, I always tell people, never look at it as another to-do list on your week. Never look at it as something else that has to suck time out of your day. It's part of your marketing plan. It's the thing that you're going, when I'm looking at my marketing budget and the time I'm going to put into my marketing, the money that I'll invest in my marketing, everything that you're going to put into the marketing for your business that year, when you're looking at that, do you have time in your schedule to make that part of your marketing plan?
We're going to pick that up. So you guys stay tuned. When we get back, we'll have more Bad Radio. Welcome back. And this portion of the show is brought to you by Ground Up Property Services. Do you know what your sprinkler system did last night? Probably not. So now's a good time to get your irrigation system serviced by Ground Up Property Services. And be sure to ask Rick Hall with Ground Up about our water sensor too, so your lawn doesn't get too much water. Call 407-468-4295 or visit groundupinc.net. Rick Hall is somebody that I have been working to get into BNI so much, and one of these days, he's going to come.
He'll show up to shut you up.
Exactly. You hear that, Rick? I'm talking to you. Oh, yeah.
Now we're all going to come for you.
He's a wonderful, wonderful man. So, so we're here with Michelle Rhea and Heidi Vold, and we've been talking a lot about BNI, and so they're part of the regional team, a very key part. And so they both have different roles. One is to like start the chapters, and the other one's to support the chapters and keep them going. So we started to talk about what is a chapter. So now let's talk about the structure of a chapter. So I'm going to ask you questions that I already know the answer to. So it's going to be kind of weird. You're going to be like, Ange, you know that. But anyway, so it's going to be like, okay, so what has to happen in order for a chapter to basically become like a baby chapter, not a real chapter? Okay. What do you call it?
So we have different phases that actually go through, and I call it the launch process.
The launch process.
So
okay.
The first
I was about to say like
stage.
I was going to say like embryo. No, that's kind of gross.
Something like that. The first cellular state of the. So no, when we have the very beginning part is called core, and that is where we have 0 to 5 members.
Okay.
When we get them to 5 members, that's when I get them named.
Okay,
because
so 5 members, they get a name.
Yep, then they get a name.
Ooh,
so,
how do you pick names?
Well, it's kind of fun because when I put everybody together, you find out also with business owners, and also, say you have your other sales representatives in there or anything, you find out lots of them think that they should have long periods of time to deliberate and let's put this out to a vote. And I'm like, yep, nope, that's not what's happening. And so I'm like, we're picking the name today because when you have everybody together, we're not going to drag this out for weeks on end. Because if we do that, it's amazing. 5 people will drag it out for weeks on end. I learned my lesson.
Right.
So with that, I will set them down and we'll go and kind of figure out what our identity might be, what it is that, means something to them. And they'll just start spitballing out different names. And first it kind of always starts out like awkwardly. Because then they're like, am I blah, blah, blah. And it's like kind of works. And then people start going and it starts the flowing of the process. So then all of a sudden it'll be like, okay, we've got like 3 different names. And then usually what always happens with these groups is all of a sudden one just comes out. And it's like everybody's like, I got goosebumps. That's it. That's what our identity is. Because for me, when I'm trying to let them pick their name, I always am reminding them, this is what you're also putting out to the world. Because this is also going to be your identity as a group. Because I also look at these chapters as, yes, we have our own individual businesses, but when you're building a chapter, that's like a business in itself.
Right.
And
well, one of my favorite questions to ask guests is, how did you come up with your name? And a lot of them, it's like, oh, it's the initial of my children and with this behind it, or, you know what I mean? Honestly, that's one of my favorite things. So what are some of the names of chapters? Like I have been a member of Power Moves and now I'm part of a member of Business Launchers. I get both of them. Like I get both those names. So what are some of the other names?
So one that we just had kickoff recently, and they're actually an online chapter completely. Their name was Fusion.
Okay.
And the reason they came up with Fusion as that name was because their chapter had it where members were coming from all over Central Florida and they were fusing together.
Love it.
And so that was, and when I first started working with them, I was like, we have to own this name. And once they embodied what it was that their name meant, it was very easy for them to grow.
Right.
We just had another group that just recently got named about 2 weeks ago, and they chose the name Ignite.
Okay.
And that was because they were looking to ignite their businesses together.
I love it.
We have another group that's in Palm Bay that just chartered into the system here in August. Their name was Limitless.
Love it.
And because they didn't want to have it where anybody put limits on them, and in their mind, the sky was the limit.
I love all of this stuff.
So these are just some of the ones that come through, and, even like Business Launchers.
Yeah.
When that first came into play at the time, Oviedo actually hadn't had a chapter that had launched.
Right.
And so that was one of the things that I know they were very adamant that we have a bunch of businesses that are going to launch. And so that's actually where Business Launchers came in. So the naming process for me is a lot of fun.
Right.
But it's really important that they understand. And even when I'm working with the launching groups, I will say over and over what the meaning of their name is to ingrain it so that they live it.
Right.
Because again, when they're also going through the launching process to build into a normal, like established chapter, they have to know what their value is not only as a business, but as a group.
Right. Well, it's also like a name you get behind too.
Yep.
Right.
Like it's like I'm always one of those people that I'm like, yay team. Like whatever team I'm on, I'm the cheerleader. Like that's what I want to do. So having a name that you can like really get behind is always been something that's like important to me. And I'm like, my son, he just got committed to St. Leo University. He's going to play baseball there, and he's a Lion. I'm like, yes, we're Lions now. But like I said, I always liked power moves because I think joining a BNI chapter is legit a power move for any business person. So I've always liked that name. I actually wasn't part of that name. That happened before I was there. But Paula Wells, like I said, she was the one who helped put that together. And business launchers, like I said, that is one that just makes sense. I get that one. So they come up with a name, and then what happens?
So then we go into phase 1. And so what happens in phase 1, that is the growth of, first off, then they're actually put into the BNI system.
Mm-hmm.
So that way people can start to apply for the group. You can go on to BNI ORL and be able to see that as a core group that's coming in. And it also shows where the area is. We also then have it where in phase 1, then we're building from 5 to 10 members.
Okay.
And so that again is like.
And then when you're in this building phase, are you just solely relying on those first 5 members to bring in the new people? Or do you guys like put out any sort of like ads or social media things that says we're looking to fill these seats? Or, I mean, because like I've never seen anything like that. It's always been up to the members to build the chapter.
Yep. Our goal is to have every new member, like, so when you're in the core group and you get to 5, we're looking for each member to be able to sponsor in a new member.
Mm-hmm.
So then if you go into that mindset, and you also, like, it's easier sometimes when we're building, the different spheres, that we have financial, home, events, business, stuff like that, health and wellness. There are certain people that you might have easier connections to invite than somebody else. So say that you're like a massage therapist, you might not necessarily be dealing with HR consultants all the time.
Yeah,
and so you're just trying to figure out, but a financial planner might have it where it's easier to do an invitation for an HR consultant. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Can I just throw out one thing?
You can throw out lots of things.
Just one, and I'm going to throw it back to you. Yes, Angela, the members can do it.
What?
As the founding member for Business Launchers, our interest meeting was me pulling every business card out of the business card stacks in my real estate office.
Oh.
Me Googling different trade professions and emailing and calling different trade professions when I circled out Oviedo. And I think in that interest meeting, there was, I know you had brought a few people, but there was upwards of 20 people just from me calling businesses in
You went on
Oviedo.
a hunt.
I have to tell you, actually, for the first ever interest meeting in my ever history of interest meetings, I remember walking in the room for the first time, and I hadn't met Michelle either. So it's like I didn't realize that she was also the exact same height of 5'10" as me. And then I'm like, and I walk in a room, and there's like 20 people that were in the room, and I was like,
you're like, oh wait.
And then I was like, we're here to work.
Yeah,
so I was like, and I like that.
going.
And she was like, this is happening. And I remember being like, okay, that sounds good.
I love that. Well, again, like I said, it's because of the seat exclusivity. When you have certain categories that are in such high demand, that's what I said earlier. It's like you have a realtor seat, like you literally can pass it down to your next of kin and your will because they're so sought after.
No, that's strange. You can't do that.
I was just kidding. I wasn't being
but
totally
yes,
serious.
But yes, yeah, it like people will hold on to those seats
as they should,
as long as they can.
Well, and the thing is, as they're inviting, like the biggest obstacle also is just getting past the invite.
Right.
And when they're in that beginning baby stages too, they're like, oh, I don't know about that. And then it's like once you go and do the invitation, it's much easier to move past that.
Mm-hmm.
And then going from 0 to 5 and 5 to 10, it's not that hard.
Right.
It moves very quickly.
It does.
Right.
Yep.
Well, I want to keep talking about that because, like I said, that first meeting, I was one of those people that after that first meeting, I'm like, I'm sold, I'm done, I'm in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Most people are.
So, all right, you guys, stay tuned because we're going to be back with more Bad Radio.